morning. Can you all hear me? Yeah. I'm blocking access to the food, but feel free to come up and serve yourself. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Amishi. Thanks so much for the invite to speak here. And I'm just going to echo the thanks to Bombay Sweet Shop for hosting before we begin. Because also, what better place to sort of talk about Mumbai's unexpected treasures than a sort of mithai factory in the middle of Baikala East. And all of you, I know it's been insane weather, and I couldn't believe that so many people had actually registered for a talk in Baikala East. Okay, I say Baikala East because this is, if anyone has an experience with this neighborhood, it is the first to flood anytime there's rain. Okay, and I know this because I've spent many years working around the corner. So thank you for being here. There is an empty seat in the front if anyone wants to come to the front here. Okay, so for those of you who know me, you know I don't do one-way conversations. So I'm going to keep this a little bit interactive. We're going to eat into our question and answer time a little bit. But if at any time you want to interrupt me with a question as well, please feel free to do so. When Amishi first asked me to think of a talk on treasure, I immediately started thinking of images that I could use. Okay? But you might notice there's no screen behind me. And that's because I decided that just like Mumbai holds its cards quite close to its chest, and it makes you work a little bit to find its treasures. It's not as easy as Amishi made it sound. I'm going to ask you to do the same, okay? So for the next half an hour or so, I'm going to take you to different parts of the city, but you have to imagine yourself there. And you have to sort of picture what we're looking at, and I'll help you. I'll describe as best as I can. And these are not obscure parts of the city, okay? Many of them may be quite familiar to you. And also, guys, the stories that I share, they're not going to be completely new to many of you, right? Because today's talk is not really about just sharing some of the city's complex, layered, incredible histories, but it's about thinking about us, all of us as citizens, as residents, as users of the city. How do we find these treasures? How do we access them? How do we enjoy them, right? How does it actually happen? So that's what I'm trying to sort of focus on today. And as Amishi said, and for those of you who know, I've spent much of my career actually thinking about planning and leading walking tours, right? So the first opportunity I had to lead a walk in Mumbai was way back in 2004. I was still a student. I was a student of history, and I was really frustrated because, I mean, you know, some of you are smiling because history can be frustrating, yes. But back in 2004, history was all about reading stuff from books, and there was no indication of how it impacted the areas around you. Right? So I was studying in the heart of South Bombay, historic city center, and there was no indication about how any of this Indian history that I was studying actually impacted the city. And I remember just being kind of bored. Yeah. And in 2004, luckily for me, the Asiatic Society at Horniman Circle turned 200. And they wanted to showcase to the city that even 200 years later, they were still a relevant living institution. Right? So this is that big white building. You know what I'm talking about. But you know what they did? They went out and they got a bunch of incredible women professors from different colleges across the city. And they asked them to bring with them some of their students. Right? And they said, we're going to put up a one-year program of essentially training these college students to lead free walking tours into the basement of the building. Right, into its collections, in and around the building itself. In 2004, guys, nobody was doing walking tours, right? And so I remember when I was first asked to be part of the project, like every SYBA student, I was like, I can't do this for a whole year. I can't give up every weekend, right? But I think better sense prevailed. And what happened was that a bunch of 30 of us spent 6 months literally living at that building. We were given access to the city's leading architects, historians, because the Asiatic Library has that reach, right? So they came in and they spoke to us about the city. They took us on walks. They helped us see the city. They helped us talk about it. And again, it was also that committee of professors. I have to say, they were incredible. And together, we were sort of trying to figure it all out. Yeah. This was 2004. And I can just say, I've said this often, that it was almost like the bug got into me, right? And it's many years later. And I'm sure you'd agree that especially in the last 10 years, walking tours in Mumbai have blown up. Yeah? Can I have a show of hands? How many of you have been on a walking tour in Mumbai? Yeah, lots of you. Exactly. Yeah, you're like, of course I have. Absolutely. And also, I want to point out, it's not one type of walking tour, right? Okay, I also will say it's not just walks for tourists. That was always happening. We're looking at walks that are targeting people who live in the city, who want a deeper experience, right? Who want to build on their lived experience of the city. So you have a range of walks. I'm going to point out some of them are here. For example, Tanya, who does a type walk in different parts of the city, where you're looking at how font and type can tell you so much about everything from the economy to people's lived experience of that neighborhood. We have I'm going to name drop a lot through this walk, okay? So if I name anyone, and even if I don't, those who haven't been on walks, look them up. They're absolutely amazing. Art Deco Mumbai has managed to do walks just looking at one type of construction and one 20-year period in the city. And they do them so well, okay? We also have the more usual neighborhood walks. So Zoya is here and she spoke last month. But Zoya does the most incredible walk in an area like Kamatipura. And the reason I bring it up is because you can't just walk through Kamatipura on your own and understand anything about the neighborhood. You need a little guidance, right? And that's what walking tours are able to do. They're able to give people a sort of insider view on different parts of the city, yeah? If not insider, look, maybe a particular lens on the city or some expertise. You're being told, hey, notice this, slow down, look at that. The next time, absolutely, you can walk on your own, right? But that's why I find the guided tour helps, because also Mumbai is chaos. How do you know that this is something important to notice and versus that? Also, guided tours are probably the best way to experience the city today, right? Leave your car, leave the highway. I'm going to give you examples of this in just a minute, but it's the only way that you can actually look closer and look longer at the city as well. Most guided walks are small groups. Yeah, you can ask questions. You can make friends with people who have similar interests. You can even join the conversation. No walk is one way only, right? And so honestly, if you think about it, it's interactive, it's intimate, and it is also the only way that you can experience a city that is immediate. What do I mean by immediate? You're standing there where something happened, right? It's not the same at all as reading a book sitting at home or in a cafe, right? You're so distant from something that happened elsewhere. Whereas a walk, you're like, okay, oh my God, this happened. And I just want to say, guys, Mumbai is the most maddening city there is. Yeah, because you can be standing, forget about areas like the Gateway or the Asiatic Library and things like that. That you expect to have big history, right? But you can be on some random street corner and hear the most piercing story or piercing history. And why is it maddening? Because there is no indication of that without the person telling you. Yeah. When I say Mumbai holds its cards close to its chest, what do you think I meant by that? Does anyone want to share? First thoughts. Why would I say a city is holding its cards close to its chest? What does that mean? Anyone?
It's not announcing itself.
It's 100% not announcing itself. Absolutely. What else? I mean, you can be anywhere in the city. You can think of being in front of the Gateway of India and there is no indication to you of what to look at, what might have happened there, of anything. It's like there's a parallel, city that we have no access to. And it is maddening because there is so much potential in Mumbai that we do not exploit at all. Okay? So, I'm a fan of walking tours, right? And my walk specifically, because of my interest and my training, we look at urban histories, urban landscapes in different parts of the city. And I want to ask you, there's one bit of history we all know, right? So Bombay begins as a group of islands. You agree with me? Everyone's nodding. You've heard that before. Islands that were gifted by the Portuguese to the English. as dowry. Yeah, that's a word that is thrown around a lot when an English king marries a Portuguese princess. It's the 1660s. I promise this is not a history lesson, right? But you've heard this, you've heard versions of it, you've read about it. What if you heard it standing at the Bandra Fort? Yeah. The Bandra Fort is located, it is the southwestern tip of Bandra. It is the actual Land's End, right, where the Taj gets its name from. And it is surrounded by water on three sides. This little fort was built by the Portuguese 30 years before the wedding. And it was built so ships going between Daman and Diu and Goa could stop and pick up fresh drinking water, right? It was really of no great interest beyond that. It was important to the sailors, that's it. And then 30 years later, far away from these 7 islands, this transaction happened, right? The islands were given away. And can you think about what that might have been like for that little fort to stand in that fort and now look out through the legs of the sea link and look at Worli village and understand that suddenly you're looking at an international border, right? Everything Bandra and behind you is still Portuguese territory. Everything across the water is British territory. Does that little bit of history become a little more real? Yeah, a little bit more relevant to us. Why are we all here? Because the English got the islands. The Portuguese may not have managed to do the same thing with it. Let's leave the fort for a minute. Yeah, let's picture ourselves walking past the Taj Land's End and we're standing. Anyone from Bandra here? I know Shanaz. Anyone else? Yeah, couple of you. You? Brilliant. So you know that if you're standing at the base of there's a street that leads you up from Bandstand to Mount Mary Church. It is one of the steepest roads in Bandra. It's called Cane Road. I think the name is Kane, but we call it Cane Road in Bandra. Yeah. And you know, up and down, if you want to lose weight, that's where people are walking up and down every morning and evening from Bandstand. But picture ourselves walking up that street, right? It takes you right up to Mount Mary Church. How many of you have been to Mount Mary Church? Everyone, yeah? You open Google Maps on your phone, there are 4 icons on the map. It's Gateway of India, Sitla Devi Temple, Prabha Devi Temple, Haji Ali, and Mount Mary Church, right? These are the 4 iconic locations marked on any Google map. But anyhow, you're walking up the road going to Mount Mary Church, and what if you heard one of my favorite bits of Bandra history, right? So Mount Mary Church is the home of Mother Mary, right? A little wooden statue that was brought here from Portugal in the 1500s. She is legitimately Bandra's oldest resident, right? The whole area, the church, everything has changed around her. But there is a local belief in Bandra that the only time Mother Mary leaves her church is on the eve of her birthday, yeah? Most of you know her birthday as the Bandra Fair, right? That's how Bandra celebrates Mother Mary's birthday. Lots of smiles. Everyone's been to the Bandra Fair, right? September 8th is her birthday, and the belief is that on the eve of her birthday on September 7th, she leaves her church for the only time that year. She walks down the hill and she gets into a little boat, and she takes that boat to invite her sisters to her wedding. And who are her sisters? Mumbai Devi, Mahalakshmi, Shanta Durga, Sitla Devi, Prabha Devi, and Leelavati. Okay, all the mother goddesses that stood on the islands of Bombay. And so many generations later, she's just one of Mumbai's mother goddesses, come from Portugal, right? And why do we all go there? Everyone goes to Mount Mary Church. I don't know if anyone's been there on a Sunday. I have a photograph. It's one of my favorite photos where on Sunday evenings, there's a little laminated notice put up on all the doors of the church, which says, do not take off your shoes, they may get stolen. And I took that photo because despite this little laminated notice, there's a sea of shoes outside the door, right? Think about it, because there are so many communities for whom it is a mark of respect to take off your shoes. You don't have to belong to any religion, any community to go into Mother Mary's Church. Another picture I wish I had taken just before the recent restoration of Bandra. I don't know if anyone else. So, you know, when you start doing walking tours, you begin to notice things that nobody else sees. And on one of the overbridges at Bandra station, there was this little piece of paper, again laminated, put on the wall. It made no sense that it was there, but it said Mount Mary, yeah, with an arrow pointing up, yeah. And it was just there. And I remember thinking, the person who has put up this sign thinks that this is enough for someone to know you need to exit Bandra station, go all the way down Hill Road, all the way up Mehboob's, from Mehboob Studio, go up Mount Mary Hill, and you will get to Mount Mary. It is amazing. Okay, I wish I'd taken that picture because in the restoration they've removed it. It's gone. But why do people go? Has anyone been to Mount Mary Church and done something specific? Why do they go? Yeah?
They say if you light a candle,
Yeah.
sit there, your wish will come.
Your wish will come true if you light a candle. What? Absolutely, right? So Mother Mary has survived a lot since the 1500s, especially living in Bandra, right? She survived pirates, she survived plague, literally. She survived invasions, her church getting broken down multiple times. And because of that, the people believe that she has really powerful gift granting abilities. If you have a wish, you go and ask Mother Mary for it. You've seen those stalls outside Mount Mary Church. Yeah? Anyone ever stop to take a closer look? I go regularly. Yeah? Because I go to pick up things like this, especially every time they go out of fashion or out of design. Yeah? Whatever your wish is, you can buy it and place it at Mother Mary's altar. So if you need money or you want to take a trip, yeah. Some wishes haven't changed a lot. I saw this for the first time, and it's specific to the fishing community. Yeah. I'll keep them here. You can come have a closer look. You can ask for help if you have a medical condition. Yeah. No, probably should have asked if I could hold on that. But the original wish that she can really grant you is if you want a girl child. Yeah. That's where it starts. If you wanted a daughter, the belief is you go and ask Mother Mary for one. And on 2 separate occasions, guys, I've had women who have come on my walk and said that they were here, maybe not because, but after their mothers asked for a girl child. Yeah. Okay. One more. If you want to get married. Yeah. And I love it because this is how wishes have changed and what people want changes. And there's so many options there. I just picked up a few. But I also want to say that where does this come from? Where does this idea that she can grant a wish come from, especially for a girl child? It goes back 200 years when the wife of the most powerful man in Bombay, whose name you all know, JJ, yeah, Jamshedji Gigi Boy. He was a powerful industrialist, trader, businessman, and his wife was only having boys who survived, right? And so she was told, go to Mother Mary. And when her daughter lived to be 11 years old, she gave thanks to Mother Mary by building the Mahim Causeway. Yeah? Connecting Mahim to Bandra, making communication, making transport so much easier, also making it easier for people to get to Mount Mary. And today it's still officially called LJ Road, right? So it's things like this. What walking tours can do is make the abstract a little bit more immediate and real. Yeah? Why did I start with Bandra? I could have taken you anywhere. But I started with Bandra because I'm from Bandra. I've grown up there, right? And one of the things that I just want to try and sort of stress on, like Zoya's doing Kamatipura, tomorrow there's also a walk in Kolaba led by Daniel who lives there and is from Kolaba. These are neighborhoods, unlike the fort, yeah, Kala Ghoda and the fort, unlike that part of town, no other neighborhood has its history written down. Right? It's not in one book. You can't just pick it up and look at it and read it. You're kind of ferreting out bits of information. You're talking to people, you're walking it, you're seeing things. And a good walk will then help you share that forward a little bit. Yeah. The next neighborhood, are you timing me? Yeah? Okay. So our next neighborhood is Baikala, right? Do you see that beautiful mural behind you? It's inspired by Rani Bagh, right? Rani Bagh is just around the corner. And it is the city's only botanical heritage garden, right? Rani Bagh was also laid out as early as the 1860s. At a time, I'm not going into history of Baikala here, guys, I promise you that. But in the 1860s, the historic South Bombay was a fortified industrial working class town. And Baikala was being laid out as being a rich elite suburb with institutions, a 53-acre botanical garden, and the city's first museum, right? Which was called the Victoria and Albert Museum. Today, it's the Bhaudaji Lad Museum. Why do I say Baikala? Because I spent the early years of my career living in Bandra, but working in Baikala and kind of living in Baikala as well, right? 2009, I got my first real job at the museum. And it was great timing because just the year earlier, the museum had completed an award-winning restoration which lasted like 6 years. Okay, why is that important? Because prior to the restoration, the museum had been in a state of disrepair. So many people in my generation, we never went as kids in school, right? Even though it's in the heart of Bombay, we missed that. And when they reopened, the leadership of the museum had a very ambitious exhibitions program, education program to bring people back to the museum. This is the city's first museum, right? Opened to the public for the first time in 1872, right? It's already celebrated 100 and something years, 50 years. I can't count, so something like that. But what happened was that we were all part of this effort to make the museum again, kind of on the cultural map of the city. People were still coming to Rani Bagh, right? The idea was that now, okay, how can we get people back to this museum that they haven't come to for so long? And it worked because 53 acres of green space, a botanical garden, a zoo, a new museum, that campus has always been Baikala's most popular public cultural space. So people came. A couple of years after that, something else comes to Baikala. Who's going to tell me? Anyone familiar with Baikala here? You've all used it. I can assure you that. It's like this new entrant into Baikala. No, the zoo was there. Yeah. What else? The station? No. You've probably... The flyover. This Lal Bagh flyover, right? So you all came under the flyover today to get into this area. And I want to ask you, right? Many of you are in the design field. You're old citizens of Bombay. What could my problem be with this flyover when they say that flyovers give you easier access, right? Come quicker to Baikala, right? That's what they're saying. Get into your cars, get on the flyovers. It makes communication and moving around so much easier. So what's my issue with this particular flyover? Zoe has heard this rant before. So if you want to share, you can. You can't see anything, absolutely. We'll come back to that. But specifically, as someone interested in people coming to the museum, ever thought of it? Absolutely. So when you get off the Lal Bagh flyover, you've come zoop, zoop, zoop on flyovers. You get off the flyover, which is a new entrant to Baikala, I will say. After like 6 years has been spent restoring this museum, putting it back on the map. The flyover ends after the entrance gate to the museum, right? So what that means for people, and I used to run the education program, guys. So what I was talking to a lot is schools, right? And they would say, oh, great, we're on this flyover. But then you get off the flyover and you have to take a U-turn under the other flyover, come back, take another U-turn, adding a good 40 minutes to your journey, right? Once you're in Baikala. So you see how, that's just frustrating. That's urban design that is not looking at culture, that is not looking at Baikala's biggest treasure and making it more accessible to people. I have this other random story about Baikala, which I was wondering whether to share or not, but since you guys seem like you're listening, I will. On Twitter a couple of years ago, I bookmarked a thread, right? There was some guy, just a regular Twitter user who was stuck in traffic. He'd come down a flyover and he was very irate because he wanted to take one of the turns or whatever, and he saw this sign which said, I love Baikala. You've all seen them all over the city? And he took a picture of that and posted it on Twitter saying, this is not a thing, nobody loves Baikala. Yeah? And it was interesting because so many people started laughing, how weird, why would they do this, why would you love Baikala? And you can tell from the tone that they're really young users. And then there was because it started getting so much attention, there were a few other people who started responding. And these were named people, you'd recognize their names, journalists and older voices on the city. And they started listing out all the things that were incredible about Baikala. Yeah, eateries, architecture, everything from the museum to sort of, an old cinema to Manto's Mumbai, all of it was being listed. And why I bookmarked it is because it was clear that these people had known Baikala before the flyover. Before the flyover told you just drive over it, right? Don't look at what's underneath. Don't walk there. Forget about, yeah. So I just thought that was interesting because what's happening is that, especially with the way the city is being built and changed, you are being told, get into your car, stick to the highways, stick to the flyovers, and you're losing sight of so much that's amazing. And really, Baikala is not everyone's everyone's not familiar with it. A lot of people are now driving through Baikala and have never actually come to Baikala before, right? And so I often ask people to think about, what their actual experience of Baikala is. My Baikala walk begins with the question, how many of you have come to Baikala often, right? There'll be one hand, two hands, maybe old residents. And then how many of you drive through Baikala, right? And that's how we're navigating the city now. And really, it is only on a walk in Baikala that you would ever get off the highway and notice Gloria Church in full. Because either now you're under the flyover or you're on it and you're seeing it in halves, right? Behind Gloria Church. Without someone with you, you never really recognize ornate grill work, a long driveway ending in a circular driveway, and begin to see the old Messina Hospital as being once the home of David Sassoon, with huge gardens on either side. And you can see it if you're given that time and say, look at that driveway, look at this ornate decorative ironwork. You'd never be able to see it because there's so much to see, right? And it's so quick. I'm going to give you one more story from Baikala. Across the road from the museum is this narrow entrance which takes you into a vegetable market. Yeah, heard of Baikala market? It's a wholesale vegetable market. It's the city's first wholesale vegetable market. But when you enter there, it's kind of amazing. It's wedged between the railway line and the main road. And it's still an old market. There's stone platforms, old implements. It is Asia's first cooperative market, right? Why is that important for us? Because all the grocers today are in the midst of a redevelopment plan. That market's gonna go, right? There's a multi-story building coming in the near future. There's nothing that we can do to stop it because it's their land. They have the right to redevelop it as they like. But what are we going to miss? You walk into that market, and if the market's on and timings are if it's open, you can only stand where the chilies are because otherwise it's so manic and so crowded. But you stand there and actually you can hear or share the story that market was actually where Dr. Ambedkar got married, right? As a young Dalit, he was denied entry into every marriage hall in the city. And then he would go on to write 2 PhDs and, draft the constitution. Shouldn't we mark that somewhere? Shouldn't there be some kind of way to remember that event? When you're standing on the chilies, because I've done this a lot, you're also looking at something. Behind me would be this curved stone wall. It's the base of the S Bridge. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Some of you may have used it today. It's this incredible curved bridge that takes you from Baikala West over the railway line to Baikala East. Yeah? The railways are also constantly plotting to break it down and rebuild it, right? What would we lose as a result of this? It's one of the, you could look into the history of the bridge. I'm not here to say that, but I want to ask you one question. Why did they build this bridge in this location? Why did they figure out a way to make this curvilinear bridge? Because the straight one was too steep, right? No horse carriages could go from one side to the other. So they said, no, the bridge has to be here. It has to be here, and so we will figure out a design that makes it happen, that makes it, and so we have this Jalebi bridge, which is incredible. But why did they do that? Because 100 years ago or more, the idea was that, hey, you know what, Mahalakshmi station has just been built. And also, they've just laid out Sat Rasta. And so all those people using that infrastructure, you know what they wanted? They wanted to ease their movement to Rani Bagh and the museum. So they said, we have to build a bridge here so that when they exit the bridge, they can see the museum on the other side. Yeah? And see, 100 years later, we're building new bridges and not caring about how people access the treasure that is around them. The last stop this morning is the fort, right? I took my time getting you to historic South Bombay because you expect it to be full of treasure. And yes, it is, right? So I want us to picture ourselves standing outside the Rajabai Tower. Yeah? Are you there with me for a minute? Yeah. And we're standing outside the gate because since 2008 and that terror attack, we have not been allowed in. Earlier, all of us could have bought a 20 rupee ticket, walked inside the university campus, walked into the building, up to the library, and you see what that does, this kind of laziness to say that everyone keep out makes pockets of the city completely invisible to us. Right? People are always, even in the fort area, guys, which is today a UNESCO World Heritage Site, people are always stopping me saying, what are you even talking about? What is the history here? Because they've walked past these buildings and never been given access, they don't see it. Okay, but anyhow, we're standing there and we're looking at the university. And let's turn around and look at Oval Maidan from there, yeah, in our minds. Yeah, and I want you to picture a time when when the university was opened, when Rajabai Tower was complete. We're in the late 1800s, and the sea came to the other side of Oval Maidan. You've probably seen photographs of it. It's quite a popular image, and you see it framed in a lot of old restaurants and a lot of new places as well. And the sea is on the other side of Oval Maidan, right? So we're looking at a city that chose to define itself visually with this grand Gothic style of architecture, right? Huge stone buildings, the university, next to it, the High Court, further down the road, VT Station. Yeah? All of these buildings were once sea facing, right? They were on the water. And not only were they sea facing and ventilated by the sea, this was a deliberate, like this was prime property, right? And these institutions were deliberately placed there at the end of the 1800s to announce to the world that, you know what, we're this incredible, rich, powerful city, but we're also an English city, the second city of the empire, the first city of India, right? Why do I say this? Because everybody approaching the city by sea would have seen this line of buildings. They were not just sea facing, they were visible from the sea. Yeah. And maybe if you squinted your eye, you would be like, oh, that kind of looks like Big Ben or some other building that I've just left behind in England. Okay, so let's leave that city. Fully fake showcase city because, you know, we're not going into that, but the plague would hit and completely break apart this idea of grandeur. But let's walk on to Oval Maidan. And that little path that crosses Oval Maidan, if you have the opportunity to walk it, guys, you should. Because it is like this moment of just like, I don't know, this space in the city always, especially except on Sundays when people will be injured because of the amount of cricket balls coming at you. Otherwise, it is incredible. There's just this little walk from Rajabai Tower to the other side of Oval Maidan. I take it as many times as I can because when you're in the middle of that path, and it's only by walking, you cannot see this from a car anywhere. Okay, stop in the middle of Oval Maidan and suddenly, you know what, you're in two cities at once. You're in this 19th century city, which was colonial and Gothic and was designed by the architects of their day. And suddenly you're also looking at another city, the Art Deco city, right? Built on reclaimed land in the 1930s. This is a city that looked westward, but not to England, right? It looked forward, it looked outward. And it was a city designed in a new style of architecture, new technology, new construction. And most importantly, it was a city that knew that independence was coming, right? So you're in a very optimistic, very different city. What's also interesting is that, I'm going to end with this, Marine Drive. Yeah, you can all picture it. You think of Mumbai, you think Marine Drive, guys. Think about it next time. Yeah, how quickly does that image come to mind? And today you could say it is still the most iconic street in the city. But when it was built, one of the leading thinkers of the day said that, oh, the buildings on Marine Drive look like an ill-fitting set of false teeth. Yeah? Why? Because of the gaps between the building. And the reason there were gaps is because after the plague, the government says that no, you have to keep gaps so sunlight can enter every ground floor window. Right? Today it's all used for parking, but once it was meant for ventilation. This was a government that said that pure sanitation comes from recognizing your neighbor's right to light and air. I want to end with that because post-COVID, nothing. There has been no change in the way we think and build today. But today's talk was not just about telling you these stories, okay? It was about trying to say that if you weren't on foot, if you weren't on a walk, how actually can you access these stories? And it's a question I'm going to leave you with because I was talking to Zoya a little while ago and I was going to ask the question today. I was like, are walks enough? Yeah, they're not. Because A, they're so fleeting. It's like 2 hours maximum. Okay, how many walks can you actually do, right? The numbers of people walking, yes, they're growing, but really it's not even a drop in any bucket. Okay? So how do we actually make something more sustainable, more widespread? How are the ways that we can access the city that are immediate, that are interactive, that are all the things that I've already said that make it real, that make it tangible, that make it right in front of you. Zoya also put a little, she burst my balloon a little bit because she said that, walks are trendy today, they may not be in future. And that's absolutely right. So without walks or even with walks, what else can we do? Yeah. I have no answers, just that question. And I think I will end there and thank you for listening. Yes. Cycling. Yeah, cycling tours, great. But it's similar things, right? So I just want to say, can we get the person out of the equation or is it always going to be something like this? Right? So that's just the question I'll leave you with. So thank you. Yeah.
You've done a very